Okay, so welcome everybody. I'm glad you're all here. Oki Naganago Mekoche Chestakomaki. I want to start by acknowledging the land that we're on. We're on Treaty 7 territory, so that's the Blackfoot Confederacy, the Gunai, Siksika, and Bagani. South of the border are the Blackfeet Nation. 1877, the treaty was signed, which brought in the Wesley, Chiniki, Bearspaw nations of Stony, and the Dene from Tsuut'ina. I always acknowledge all First Nation, Métis, Inuit status and non-status across Turtle Island as the keepers of these lands. And I'm really happy that we're all here. So this crew right now is the Langevin Rename the School group. Part of it, we're recording it for the other folks who can't be here. And I want to introduce my friend who is all the way from out east. And well, no, you're originally from up north, so I'll let you do your introduction.
Hi, everyone. My name is Aliqa. I am originally from Kangeltugapik in the Qikiltaruk region of Nunavut, which is located on the eastern northern part of Baffin Island in Nunavut. But right now I am living and staying on unceded Algonquin guest because I have never officially been invited the traditional way. And I'm really looking forward to being here to have this conversation with you guys because I think it's super important, especially coming together from all walks of life and sitting. So I'm so excited.
I'm excited you're here too. Do we want to do a round of introductions and then that way we kind of all know who's here? And if you're all okay with it, I'll just say Miriam, and then you can pass it from there, okay?
Miriam, she, her. I met Michelle many years ago in I Don't Know More, and we did a lot of drumming and singing together, and we're still doing all sorts of good things for the indigenous people here. So I'm very excited about this meeting today. Uh, I don't know anybody's name over there. So
Okay, let's go with Sarah Flynn. You're next.
Hi, I'm Sarah Flynn. Super excited about this conversation. And I moved American from Indiana, moved to Canada 8 years ago, and now a citizen here on Treaty 7 territory. And the learning has been, I've learned a lot and in process of reshaping my whole understanding of history and everything that's happened. And I feel like this is a really important part of it. And I'm honored that I'm here and happy to be a part of this. And thank you for coming.
Okay, Jeremy.
Hi, everyone. I'm Jeremy. Pronouns he, him, they. I'm a settler colonist. I was born in Calgary here, Treaty 7 territory. Mostly raised out just outside Quebec City, and unfortunately I don't know. It's unceded in a lot of ways. I don't know if there are or are not any treaties covering that land. But yeah, raised out east. I have mostly French ancestry. And yeah, super excited to meet you, Aliqa. Sorry, I probably pronounced that wrong. And yeah, just to be here. Thank you.
Awesome. Thank you. Maybe we'll pass it over to Lori.
Hi, everyone. Hi, Aliqa. Nice to meet you. My boys are usually with me, Zach and Seth, but one of them is a little bit burnt out today. I think he just needs a bit of a break, and the other is getting his arm recasted. He broke it a few days ago, so he's at the children's right now. But all is good. He's fine. He's okay. So yeah, thanks so much for being here, and I live in Calgary in Treaty 7 territory, and yeah, I'm just excited to learn more.
Awesome. Heather Lucier, I see you just went off. Would you like to introduce yourself?
Ah, hello. I'm also having a hectic, but once you get to know me, I got 4 kids. That's just the way it is. I am Cree on my mom's side, Anishinaabe Ojibwe mixed on my dad's side. Thanks for coming. Great to have more people. And that's it.
Awesome. Jen and Joy.
My name's Joy. I grew up in Calgary on Treaty 7 land. Yeah. And I'm Jen, Joy's mom. I am a third generation settler, and Joy's ancestry is Irish, English, Scottish, and mine is English and Scottish. And I'm super happy to be here and honored to be here as well. Thanks.
Awesome. So I guess maybe we'll Shelly, I don't know if you're capable of. You're doing okay. Awesome.
Yeah, I'm Shelly. I'm 10th generation settler on my dad's side. I'm an autistic individual. I have a weird thing going on with my hand. It's an aneurysm or a pseudoaneurysm. It's weird. So I can't really do anything with my right hand. But I'm here and I can use my voice. Thank you. And I was raised on Treaty 7 in Lethbridge in Calgary.
Awesome. Now, is there anyone from our crew that we've missed? I think we got our crew all figured out. So maybe we'll start with Mackenzie.
Hi everybody, thanks for having me. My name is Mackenzie. I'm originally from Edmonton, Alberta, but right now I'm on unceded Algonquin territory in Ottawa, going to school at Carleton, studying human rights and law.
Awesome. Emily?
Hi, thanks for having this conversation. It's really important. I'm Emily. I'm from Ottawa, unceded territory, and I'm in my 4th year studying human rights.
Thank you. And Nadia?
Hi everyone. So my name is Nadia, and I'm currently in my 4th year in biology and human rights at Carleton University, and I've been born and raised on unceded Algonquin territory, and I have definitely benefited from the settler colonial structures in terms of the immigration system. So I thought I'd just highlight that.
Well, it's amazing to have you all here, and we're really honored to have this cross collaboration and conversation. I was having a phone call with a friend of mine earlier today in Edmonton, and she was telling me about a community in Edmonton called Oliver. And apparently, there's a youth that's trying to get the Oliver school name changed. Who is Oliver? Oliver was the person that stole a whole bunch of land from the Enoch Nation in Edmonton, and that's basically, all the west side of Edmonton should be Enoch land, but was stolen from this fellow named Oliver. So I have to reach out to this other person trying to change that school's name and get them involved. But, we had an earlier podcast about the work that was done out in Carleton. So maybe I'll pass it over to you folk and have you tell us what you want to tell us about what that process was like for you. And, what were some of your barriers? What were some of your wins in the hopes that we can do that work here and replicate it?
Awesome. So I always like to tell all stories and everything else from the beginning. So I will hand it off one of to you ladies, and you guys can start how it started. So go for it.
Yeah, so I was actually taking a human rights class with Aliqa, Mackenzie, and Nadia. We actually all sat in opposite corners about a year ago or year and a half ago from now, which is funny to look back on. but we were learning about Indigenous resurgence and governance and sovereignty. And Aliqa luckily shared, I think, a bit of her experience with the professor in office hours. So the professor taught us a bit about the Inuit relocations in Gordon Robertson and how there was a building named after him. So I looked a bit into it and discovered there was also a scholarship in his name as well. And I was really taken back about Carleton's role in upholding white supremacy and shining a light on who he was and sort of neglecting the negative parts of history. And then we saw what happened in 2020 with George Floyd. And I had a friend who was taking the class in the summer or summer class, and she needed notes. And so I passed those on, and I remembered what we learned that day. And so I reached out to Nadia to confirm the notes, and I thought a petition was the best way to get the ball rolling and educate more in the community so we could start that conversation. I don't know, Nadia, do you want to jump in?
So Emily explained it really well, especially in the case, like if we were to look back like to 2019, we essentially never looked at each other in class, but now here we are pushing for this change. But that's also just one thing that it's really interesting about all of this. But in addition to the petition, the support that we did receive was actually like quite a lot, considering that I think our petition reached, I can't remember if it was over 600 or 700 signatures,
I
but
think it was 800.
okay, we 800, quite a lot of people in that case. And with that support, our next steps was to actually contact the university administration, which was, I can't remember who was the professor, but it was the head of Indigenous Studies, because we assumed that would have been the next best step in terms of bringing forth this change. And once we reached that point, simultaneously, the university did release the 41 draft calls to action. There's a specific name to it. I can't pronounce it. But that specific report, which essentially outlined that one of the calls to action was to actually change the name of buildings that did hold colonial violence altogether. So that really did push our initiative. So if anyone wants to jump in right now, I'd be more than happy for someone to take over.
So what Nadia is talking about is it's like a TRC thing that is happening at Carleton, and it's called CUSIC. I don't remember the full name of it because it's super long, but I have been a part of it since the very beginning, in a couple years ago, and that was one of the things that we have talked with the university and everything, was changing the name and ensuring that Indigenous views and outlooks when it comes to the importance of name was going to be honored, especially given the context of Carleton. And Mackenzie was going to add something, so I will let her talk.
I was just going to add that at that point we kind of all came together. I came a little bit after I inquired with one of the professors we were talking with. And it was just kind of cool how we kind of all came together and worked on like a draft report that we were going to give to the university. So that was just kind of a little thing I wanted to add.
That sounds awesome. Yeah.
Then finally, I came along after everyone, and I can be known to be like a little pushy and very voicey, and I talk a lot if I see something is not right, especially when it comes to people that don't have a lot of voice. So then I went on, and shortly thereafter, things started really coming together. And despite Emily and Nadia and Mackenzie's efforts to try to get the university on board, it was actually a ride for them, especially because there's not a lot of research on who this man was that the administrative building was named after. So much so that they were asked where the research or the evidence or the facts was on this man or this individual's personal hand and in relocating Inuit, which was very violent, and we're still paying for it today. With that said, if you guys are not aware, Inuit, technically, depending on how you really look at it, you can argue weren't colonized until the 1950s. So my father is not even 70 years old, and my father was colonized, not when he was a baby, but when he was a child. So he still has memories of the process and his entire world changing over and over again every single day. So that's a little bit of a context of who this man was and why it is so important to change the name of Robertson Hall, especially on Carleton, especially given that Carleton always takes pride that it's on unceded Anishinaabe Algonquin territory. And with all of the stuff that Carleton is doing, it's only proper you start changing things when you start talking about reconciliation, right? With reconciliation, you should have like a reciprocal relationship or at least to be open to it. So it was kind of a long haul in changing the name of Robertson Hall, and there was a lot of emotions involved. I'm sure you guys can all imagine and understand. There was a lot of ups and downs and little accomplishments, but then it felt like we were 3 steps back. A lot of times we found ourselves that even though it's really hard to fight this idea and this world or a society or an institution that is based on one way of truth. And what I mean by that is the experiences of one story only being told, not several, where it should be, where that reciprocal relationship happens. So yeah, I don't know if Mackenzie, Emily, or Nadia want to add to that so far.
Yeah, I was just gonna say, I think there's a initial resistance when talking about things like that, and we faced a lot of, not a lot of resistance, I would say overall we had a lot of support in the community, but you know, you are going to face barriers, and we've had encounters where we had to consistently prove ourselves and prove the history. And you know, one in academia may argue that it's normal to prove things, but when it comes to indigenous issues, you know, you're asked to prove things at a different rate, I would say. But um, with that frustration, at the end of the day, like, we had each other, and there's strength in that, and there's strength in each other, and there's power in numbers. Like, when you're discussing things and you're educating those in the community, they want better, and they want Carleton to do better, and you know, they want a better world. So there is power in numbers, and I don't think that people should be scared by that resistance, because I think that those barriers for people, they come from a place of discomfort, and it's, for them, it's questioning the society they have to live in. So it's uncomfortable for them to do that, and that's what I would point out to the youth, is like, not to give up, because those people that are pushing back against you are really, they're questioning themselves and where they are. And it's really powerful at your age, what you're doing, because I don't know what grade you're in or how old you are, but when I was in school, like, I was so shy, like, so timid, like, there was no way. First of all, I didn't learn about this, so I wouldn't know about it. But second of all, like, I would not have had the courage to speak up like you are. So I think there's a lot of power in that.
Thank you for saying those things. Jen and Joy, do you want to respond to that at all?
Yeah, it is nice for you to say that, because like we have come across a lot of barriers, and it does sometimes get discouraging, and you just kind of want to be like, do we really need to do it? But like, yes, we do. Yeah, and I'm in grade 8, by the way.
And I'd just add maybe that I think it's been really powerful for the kids to have a group of people around them and with them in doing this process too. And I'd say they're really learning the power of their voices and what they can accomplish.
And that's like a crazy thing if you think about it. If you can do this now, it just your different way of thinking and understanding and opening up your heart, imagine what you can do in the future. Oh, there. I
I
don't know what
muted her.
happened.
Sorry, I
But just
muted her.
okay. Oh, that's okay. But what I was going to say is it makes you wonder because if you can get it and you guys are in grade 8 and you guys started thinking this at a really younger age, everyone else can get it, right? And quite honestly, that's something that I have struggled with being down south because I didn't grow up with that kind of mindset. I grew up in a completely different world where there is no trees, there's no gardens. A lot of people say it's a frozen desert, it's really hard to live in. It's night and day. So coming down here, I have always found a lot of people to maybe be so closed-minded, like, and it's not their fault, right? A lot of people learn things very differently, and our experiences play a big part in how we think things. So even when you start feeling discouraged, I think it is so important to be open-minded still to those people. Even though they're saying mean things sometimes, it's because they don't understand. And sometimes they just need someone just to push them a little, to understand, to educate them, and to show them a different worldview or a different experience, which I think you are doing a fantastic job of. I'm not going to lie, I did look into the three of you guys a little bit, and I was quite impressed because I have a daughter too who is 12. And I think it's really amazing. I think just even being able to have this big conversation about a big man that lived so long ago that did some not very nice things to humans, right? Because at the end of the day, it's not about doing bad things to just Indigenous people or Black people. It's about doing things to people in general. But then taking it on, taking this big person on, even though he has been long gone, but he's still getting honored in Canada, and then standing up and saying, this is wrong. That takes a lot of guts, and not a lot of people can do that.
That
So you guys
reminds
should really
me,
stand tall.
would you mind telling the story about the family, the Robertson family? Because that is a huge component of this conversation that really shook me, that I hope people who listen to the podcast heard. And I'd love for you to elaborate a little bit on that as well.
Sure. So did anybody want to mention how that process went? Mackenzie, Emily, Nadia?
It was a bumpy road to say the least. I mean, I'll speak to the meeting that we had. Our first meeting initially was with, in terms of university administration, was with Kahante Horn Miller, who is the VP of Indigenous Initiatives at Carleton, and she was recently appointed of that position the summer we started the initiative. And with that, we eventually met with the provost and the president, where we insisted upon that we wanted this to happen as soon as possible, because even though there was a scholarship endowed under Robertson's name, we wanted the building name first and foremost, right? And with that in mind, there was, I don't know how to say it nicely, but there was a lot of like, yeah, we're gonna do it, but then there wasn't, but it was all talk but no action. And it was like that a for quite a number of months. And eventually, at one point, there was a conversation with the Robertson family, but it wasn't with us. It was actually with the university administration. I don't know if someone would like to take it over from that point, because But there was essentially that conversation, and then there was a flat out rejection apparently from that call that the provost had. And then it was a lot of back and forth again. And one thing to note within those few months, we were barely informed of essentially what was happening behind the scenes. It was a lot of, okay, we'll get back to you. Okay, we'll get back to you. Okay, we'll get back to you. I think I can count those. If I had $1 for every time they said that, I think I'd have $10. Like, that's quite a lot of money. So, and that's within a span of 4 months in this case. So there's that. But if anyone wanted to take off from there in terms of like the rest of the communication, that'd be really helpful.
So what happened with the name change is we didn't want just a name change. The name change is only the first step, right? So now what are you going to do? Well, the first one was you're going to let the family know, the Robertson family, because Gordon Robertson's son and daughter and grandkids are still very much alive and very much knows what is going on. And we wanted to contact them out of respect, because we put ourselves in their shoes, and why would you want somebody to hear these things about your father, right? That's their father, they love him. So that was the main one. Another one was ensuring that the building was going to be named Algonquin Anishinaabe name, because there's no Algonquin Anishinaabe anywhere on campus. So that was another big important one where the communities were collaborated with by the university to come up and choose a name that they see fit. So the main one was talking to the Robertson family. The university thought this was bizarre. Why would you go talk to the family, right? That has possibly, you could argue, help oppressed Inuit. Well, that's one of the teachings that I have had growing up back home and living in a very Inuk style home where you have to always think of everybody else. You, again, have to be in reciprocal relation. So it was really important that the Robertson family knew firsthand so they wouldn't get surprised. So it took, as Nadia said, like 2 months to try and push that conversation to happen. Finally, they were able to get a hold of his daughter, Gordon Robertson's daughter, and she wasn't happy naturally, right? Because all of a sudden her father's name was going to be removed from a university where he was a chancellor once. So then she gave the issue to her brother. And the brother and the vice president, one of them anyway, at Carleton, had a conversation with him. And he was not happy. He would not even have it. He didn't understand why this conversation was even happening. You know, his father did great things on the Canadian front. His father was a well-respected man, as well as his family, and still today. So how dare the university even consider changing the name? And then came the conversation of the scholarship, you know, the money, all these things. And nope, they wouldn't have it. And I personally still wanted to talk to them face to face because I wanted them to hear my side of the story. And I wanted to hear their side of the story too, because it's just as important as my lived experiences, right? We're all human. So finally, after emails and everything between the Robertson family and the university, my team and I came together and it was just like, okay, we need to come up with a new plan. So why don't I write a letter explaining why it's so important? And it was actually, this one was just an email. And that email opened up their hearts just a little bit, just enough for them to maybe listen and even possibly hear what we have to say. So even though there were still conversations going on and everything between the university and the Robertson family, we were told again that no, they're not going to have it, right? So then I wrote a letter because the university did not want me specifically talking to them because they were afraid of the anger that was going to happen and everything. So I wrote a letter and I told them a story of my experiences and my truths because they're just as important as everybody else's. So I wrote that and we put a package together, Nadia, Emily, and Mackenzie and I. So I wrote a personal statement, the second one, and we put everything that Mackenzie, Emily, and Nadia had done into the package. And then they read it. That's when they had a huge change of heart and they actually turned around and they accepted not only the name change, but they also started supporting it. And the only thing they asked, the only one thing that they asked was a plaque, which is also very important. It's just as important as the name change, right? You're dealing with a lot of different truths and a lot of different lived experiences, right? You can't just say that Inuit lived experiences are just as legitimate and everything, but you also need to honor the other side as well. Because at the end of the day, do you really think any human being is going to hurt another human being knowing what it's going to cause? See, I don't believe that. I don't believe that because we were all born with love in our hearts, right? All these extra funny things that happen in the world, they're just learned behaviors and maybe self-serving, but they are altered by experiences and differences and everything else. So at the end of the day, Robertson's family was able to open up their hearts and their minds and listen to a completely different lived experience and worldviews and started supporting us. And that is a beautiful thing.
One of my favorite parts about you telling that story on the podcast was how you talked about how you need to always come from a place of love. And I that really resonated with me. I've been thinking about it ever since our last conversations. And we have about maybe 20 minutes, something like that. So I wanted to ask our Langevin crew if you have questions that you would like to put out there. And I'll say this just to preference what you were talking about with the family. You know, at no point in time has Langevin ever reached out to the city of Calgary and said, I can't believe you renamed a bridge. At no point in time has Langevin ever had roots in Calgary. The only reason why they named the bridge and the school after him was because they gave funding for the original bridge, not even the one that's there. And just out of default, they gave the name of a school to this man. So, it's even more complicated in your case because you actually literally have living family. We don't even have Langevin roots here in Calgary. So for the Calgary Board of Education to not be putting forward this and to give you all some history here, one of our key committee members, Larry, he had a child that went to Langevin School. And when they found out 7 to 8 years ago what Langevin had done, and at that time, the CBE was very proud to say right on their website he was considered an architect of Indian residential school. So, which has since changed, but regardless, um, it's that bigger picture that they were talking to the principal and the CBE 8 years ago. When I ran for politics 4 years ago, I was talking about it with all the school trustees. 2 years ago, we had a teacher work at helping 400 letters go to the CBE that were disregarded by the CBE. So, now Joyce, Seth, and Zach, they have tried to engage on this issue. And Joy especially had written letter. Oh, by the way, you knocked it out of the park in front of the public meeting the other day by telling your story of writing that letter and not getting a reply back. So, like these are youth that have been working really hard, doing their letter writing, getting barriers, getting discouraged. So now we have the community of Calgary and the Indigenous community saying, hold up, these kids are right. And I know that the work that you all had done out in Carleton, the work we're trying to get done here, this is a national conversation that needs to happen about all of the things that we've named. We have a John A. Macdonald High School here as well. There's a statue about to go up here in Calgary. So this is like the start of a bigger conversation that we have to have nationally. And Jen, you popped in a little late. I was wondering if you wanted to introduce yourself and just let everybody know who you are, where you're from, and then maybe we'll start funneling some questions from folks.
Sure. Sorry to arrive late. Just the day got away from me. I'm Jennifer Markides. I'm a postdoctoral scholar at the University of Calgary. I'm also a member of the Métis Nation of Alberta, and enjoy being part of important work in reconciliation, and really excited for the youth. I worked for the Calgary Board of Education for 10 years, and so I kind of have that insider perspective, and I've also done a lot of work with the Calgary Board as far as research goes, looking at Nitz School, which they're really proud of as well, moving towards reconciliation and trying to privilege Indigenous worldviews in active ways. So it is kind of contrary to the discussion at hand.
Awesome. So thank you for that. I've been making notes because I forget everything in 2 seconds. I'm like squirrel. Anybody have questions that they have before we as we get going? And let's open it to Joy and Lori if you guys are. Yeah, you're in for sure, Heather. Like you're for sure that voice.
I'll ask a question on behalf of Joy and I. Just curious from the Carleton group, sort of what's on your mind now, or what further work you're planning to do together, or what that looks like. And part of where that question comes from is that I think the kids know that changing the name of their school is one small step, but that there's also the bigger school board policies and how they do things generally, and they have that on their mind, as well as like other steps of things that need to change. So I'm just curious from your perspective, what's next for you, or where you guys are at now.
Did you want me to go? Yes.
Oh yeah, go ahead.
Okay, well, I'll speak on behalf of just general steps, and then Aliqa will talk about the additional steps that we're also looking to. But one step is that one thing to highlight about the announcement that was released about the 3 buildings that are being renamed on our campus is the fact that there is no explanation as to how Gordon Robertson connects to the Inuit community. So that is essentially a really big problem for us, because what our goal was to also educate people as to what has happened to the community as a whole, right? So so what our steps currently is, we're going to the school media at first in terms of just explaining what this history is. So that's our steps right now. That's what we're working towards, and we're hoping that eventually people will really do understand who Gordon Robertson actually was, because there was no explanation. It's just one paragraph, and that's all we got.
That's been one of the more interesting conversations here, is that people who get defensive about, well, we can't change history. I always ask them, well, who was Langevin and how come you know about him? And the irony is people never knew who Langevin was ever prior to ever renaming the Langevin Bridge or this Langevin School. So the irony is we are actually helping them learn their own history that they are so defensive about that they don't even know anything about. So that's kind of a win on our side if we use that as a talking point. So anybody else? Yeah, Lori.
Um, we were just kind of wondering, like, in your guys' experience, what are some of the most effective ways of re-educating and getting those other truths out there in ways that people engage with and really notice?
Love. When you do all things with love, everything always comes so nicely into place. I don't do anything out of anger. I always try to understand the other side because they are just as important and just as the same as me. But when you do everything out of love and it's fully coming from your heart and you're speaking from your heart, everything always falls into place. But that doesn't mean everyone's going to listen. And that's okay. Maybe they're not ready to listen, or maybe they're not meant to listen. But at the end of the day, if you do it all with love, everything always falls into place. And what's really ironic is, did you know people all over the world, if you look at their ancient laws and their ways and their customs, their number one law, just like how we have laws in Canada, their number one law is to do all things with love. And if you look at how the governing system or how the education system was when they were doing all things with love, everything came so nicely in place. But that doesn't mean everyone's going to listen all the time. So when you do things with love and you try to look at their perspectives and you accept it and you know when to walk away, because you can't fight, right? It's never good to fight to try to change someone's feelings or their thoughts, because you can't do that. It's impossible. Only they can do that.
And that's a really important point for those folks that criticize us. Are they coming from a place of love and understanding? No. So remember that, and remember, because we are in Treaty 7 territory, that when both sides signed that treaty, it was with good intentions. And I think this reconciliation work that we're doing and along the lines of treaty, remember, that's where we're coming from. We're trying to honor those treaties and we're trying to honor reconciliation with the spirit. So I hope that helps. And anybody else have any questions? So, Jeremy says if there's extras, Jeremy, why don't you just unmute yourself?
Sure. I didn't want to take up anyone else's time, but I'm basically wondering if your group has a sense for what finally made the difference in getting that name change to happen, even if they're obviously kind of doing it in a way that doesn't acknowledge the significance.
It's the truth. And I'm sure Nadia, Emily, and Mackenzie will agree. But at the end of the day, it all came down to truth, right? It all came down to sitting down with a family, eye to eye, being equals, and one party saying one thing and the other party saying the other. And this is where this whole idea of being in a reciprocal relationship comes into play, and coming from a place of love, right? Like, sure, I'll be the first one to admit that, sure, I can turn around and I can blame what has happened to my father, which has then been passed down to me, then my children, that has caused a crazy stuff in my family. Things that people should never go experience or anything. But I think that was the breaking point of the whole name change, and even Emily, Mackenzie, and Nadia doing it. It was coming from a place of love and sitting down eye to eye, looking at each other, listening to each other's stories, right? And this is why it's so important to do stuff out of love. And I always tell everyone that, because it does all fall into place. It does fall into place when you sit down and you connect. with someone and you hear their side of the story with no judgment.
Awesome. Thank you. All right. Looks like everybody's kind of quiet. Emily, hop on in.
I was just gonna say, there was the symposium this past week, and a quote I learned that I think applies to the situation is that change happens at the speed of trust and at the speed of empathy. So whether that's like Lori, I think you asked a question about like what's the most efficient way to get things done. And it doesn't always have to be this big thing or, going to the news and telling your story. But I think it's one conversation and one day at a time, because when you have that conversation and you tell the story, you're building trust. And people, if they're open minded, they will listen and they have that empathy. And that makes the work that much easier after the fact.
So I'm going to take that. I'm going to make it a quote. I am going to make it a small little thing. I'm going to put that on every social media we have. I think that was like the quote that I'm going to hopefully, yeah, put out there for especially folks that are unsure. Because I think what is still happening, like I don't know what it's like out in Carleton. I'm just assuming it's better than Alberta, but Alberta, I mean, I'm certain you're seeing all the hate coming from Alberta right now. This is what we're dealing with, that type of friction, hurt, pain. Um, we're putting out news releases over like most hateful coffee images, nothing close to truth and reconciliation conversations, and having a premier fighting Indigenous every step of the way. So if we can, put quotes like that out there and show people our intention is coming from a good place, which I think we did in our last podcast and this video that we're going to put out, that all of this comes together in a good way and hopefully can spark that national conversation in a really good way. So I can't thank you all enough for coming and for educating us and having this cross collaboration. I don't want to speak too much for everybody, but I'm sure everybody here would love to, if they think of something later, contact one of you. So I'm hoping everybody will be open to that and just moving forward together in the best way we can. Because I think that we need to embrace the fact, if we as a country are really, working at the spirit of national reconciliation, these are really important conversations to have. And just as Carleton had put together that report, here in Calgary, we have the White Goose Flying Report, which was the municipal lens of that. But I've certainly seen zero effort towards the Calgary Board of Education towards putting real meaningful systemic change towards that. And in fact, if you have a look at our meetings, there were some really hurtful things that were said to me personally. So, and in our conversations here, I'm seeing Sarah saying thank you so much. I found this conversation inspiring. Heather Lucier, open invitation to join all of our social media. Jennifer, so wonderful to hear your story and the success that you had through your care and perseverance. Lori, thank you so much. Your experience is so important and valuable. We are learning so much. And Jen, thank you for taking the time to talk to us and provide your insight. So lots of good relationships built today. So thank you all for being here.
Thank you for having us. We were very excited for this conversation when Aliqa first told us about it. We were very excited. So thank you so much for having us. We really do wish you success. And if you guys need us to support you in any way, like, we're here. The semester's about to end for us. Emily and I are graduating soon. So we're here.
Yay! Congratulations.
You guys have no idea how excited Mackenzie, Nadia, and Emily were when they saw your article. And they were just like in disbelief that you guys were doing this, because they know how much energy it takes and how big you have to do it. But they talked about you guys for like 5 minutes on how cool you guys were, and they didn't even meet you guys yet. And they're pretty cool too. I just wanted to say that. But I just wanted to say thank you, everyone. Thank you for taking the time and for all that you're doing. Don't ever give up. and always speak from your heart, because at the end of the day, that does thing.
When I was getting interviewed with CTV, Bill had talked about they had already interviewed the youth, and we were just all, can you believe these youth? No, I can't believe them. Look at them go. All of us, we were all blown away by the effort that they're putting forward, and we want to amplify it. And you say, I was there today, and they said the same thing. They're like, those kids. I said, I know. I can't believe them. So I hope you all know how important this work is, and hopefully you'll be inspiring some youth across Canada to continue this work in their little pockets as well. And I'm not gonna, you know what? When I go to conventions, everyone says, "Oh, it's tough being in Calgary doing," and I always say, "Yep, it's tough," and I can't. Like, I think that the three youth doing this work here in Calgary, if you guys can do it here in Calgary, then the rest of the country has zero excuses, man. Zero. All right. Anybody else have anything else they'd like to say? All right. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you.